Okay, everyone, this is Dr. Lauren Varich. She's going to be speaking about the benefits of a whole food plant-based diet for us. So you can go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
We're having technical difficulties. Switch back. She doesn't hear us for some reason. Dr. Varich, do you hear us? Do you hear us?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
All right, you're welcome to start as soon as you are ready.
Okay, very good. So my name's Dr. Laura Varich, and I am really glad to be able to speak with you today to share the secret about how to achieve your best health with whole food plant-based eating. So we know, and you guys have been hearing today, that whole food plant-based eating is a way of eating close to what comes from the earth, and we know this is best for our environment, and of course, best for animal welfare, and also turns out to be the best thing for human health. And that's mostly what I'm going to be speaking about today, is the effect of what we eat on human health. We know that our Western diet is the leading factor for all of these chronic diseases like stroke, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's disease, cancer. Our diet is really the main factor that's causative for these disease processes. Now, our genes contribute maybe 10 to 20% of our risk for these diseases, but the rest comes from our lifestyle, and the majority of that is from our diet. So we know that our diet is critical for preventing these diseases. And we know that if we're talking about our health and our diet, the two pillars of our diet that keep supporting our poor health are, number one, animal products. Eating too many animal products is causing our poor health. And also eating too many ultra-processed foods is causing poor health. And so we have one solution, and that solution is whole food plant-based eating. Now, the research is really clear that this is true. So when I was first finding out about this information, I really delved into the research, and I was inspired by a lot of the leaders in the field of whole food plant-based eating, like Dr. Barnard, who you just heard from, and other leaders like Dr. Katz and Dr. Greger. And I also read through research for about 2 years before I put together a lot of the information that I have. And it was very clear through all this research that whole food plant-based eating is the key to our better health. So when we talk about whole food plant-based eating, we're going to talk about the fact that those foods are whole foods. They come from close to the earth. We can recognize those as plant foods. And plant-based meaning we want to eat mostly plant foods. So we've seen on the research by Drs. Esselstyn and Dr. Ornish have even shown us that we can reverse chronic disease, like coronary artery disease, a condition we thought was not reversible before their research showed that it was. Type 2 diabetes used to be a one-way road to worsening and worsening health, but now we know that that can be turned around, as can almost all of these chronic conditions, by changing our diet. So when I say plant-based, why is plant-based the best thing for us? Well, we're getting back to, when we eat plant foods, whole plant foods, the way that we are supposed to eat, the way that we're designed to eat. Our bodies, our physiology, and our anatomy are that of what is called a frugivore. So we are not carnivores or omnivores whose primary diet or most optimal diet is meat or meat and plants. We are actually what's called frugivores, and we share this with our great ape relatives. Our primary foods that we should be eating for health are fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds. And when we say seeds, we also mean whole grains. And those are the foods for optimal health. Now, when we look at carnivores and omnivores, what we know about their physiology is that their brain is fueled by fat and protein, and that is high in meat products, right? And our brain is fueled by carbohydrates, and carbohydrates come from plant foods. So we know that it is the optimal food for us. And here is where we start to notice the effects of having a diet that is not our optimal diet. Carnivores and omnivores can metabolize large amounts of fat and cholesterol. Now, cholesterol only comes from animal foods. Animals make cholesterol, and so it's made by the liver. And so only when we eat animal foods do we get excess cholesterol. Our body makes cholesterol, but it makes all that we need. And any excess, we actually are not programmed to be able to deal with. So we can't metabolize large amounts of cholesterol. And this is what's the beginning of what animal foods, the way that they can cause harm to our bodies. But there's so many other ways too that animal products are damaging our health. For example, when we cook animal products, heterocyclic amines are produced that can lead to cancer. Even our microbiome, our gut bacteria that really are there to break down fiber and generate products for our good health. Even those gut bacteria, when we feed them a lot of animal products, they make TMAO, a product which leads to and is known to be highly associated with heart disease. So we have lots of issues when we eat animal products that cause these chronic diseases. And it was Dr. Roberts, who is the chief of the American Journal of Cardiology, who said, when we kill and eat animals, they in turn kill us. And I think that's really apropos. So what about protein though? Okay, so if I'm not going to eat meat, where am I going to get my protein? Well, no problem at all. We're going to get our protein direct from the source where the cow gets it, from plants. This cow, with all this musculature, gets its large amount of protein from plant foods alone. So we don't need to eat animal products to get protein. We get plenty of protein. It's a myth that we are protein deprived. We actually eat twice as much protein as we need. So protein, no problem. We're going to get that from plants. How about dairy? Now we know that dairy has high amounts of, if you're talking about cheese, salt and saturated fat, which we know both those things can lead to heart disease. But we also need to know that this is a product that was made for baby cows. It takes this baby calf from about 60 pounds to over 400 pounds in 6 months. So it is, cow's milk is a product that is made for rapid growth of this baby cow. It is not made for us. And those same factors that cause rapid growth in the baby cow can also stimulate cancer cells in us. So we increase our breast cancer risk by 50%, ovarian cancer risk by double, and prostate cancer risk by 4 times if we drink dairy products. So this is something we don't want in our lives. Okay, so if we don't have dairy, then where do we get our calcium? Well, that is also no problem at all. We're going to get calcium from where the cow gets the calcium, direct from the source, plant foods. A nice example is this moose, which puts on 85 pounds of antlers in 4 months every year by eating only plant foods. Our skeleton is only 25 pounds and it doesn't turn over very quickly. So we don't have the kind of needs this moose does at all as far as calcium. And this moose is getting all the calcium it needs from plant foods. So we can skip the middle cow entirely and get our protein and our calcium from plant foods. So we're not going to focus our diet on meat. We're not going to focus our diet on dairy. We are going to be focused on whole plant foods. And of course, I've underlined whole here because that's very important. Again, we want to eat foods as close as they come to us from the earth. And surprise, carbohydrates are good for our health. This whole low carbohydrate thing is actually really damaging our health. We saw already that our brain, our muscles, our liver cells, our red blood cells are fueled by carbohydrates. This was the food that we were meant to eat and that we have evolved to eat. It is the right food for us. And so when we eat low carbohydrate diets, we are really harming our bodies in so many ways. So we need those carbohydrates, but we need the right carbohydrates, right? So we need things like these whole grains and fruits and vegetables, beans, nuts. Those kind of things are really great for our health. Now you can take those foods, you can strip away everything in them that is good for us, the fiber and all the vitamins and minerals. You take all that away and end up with soda and white bread and things like that. And that's how carbohydrates have gotten a bad name, because this is the super processed, ultra processed carbohydrates that are bad for us. Whereas the primary source of the carbohydrates, the plant foods, there is no better food in the world for us. So that brings us to this second pillar for core health, ultra processed foods. Ultra processed foods, you may be surprised to find that 60% of our calories now in the United States come from ultra processed foods if we're adults. Even more disturbing is a recent report showed that 70% of the diet of kids and teens comes from ultra processed foods. This is people from 2 to 19 years of age, 2-year-olds. 70% of their diet is coming from ultra processed foods. You know, those foods that you find in the middle aisle of the store with, 30 ingredients, those frozen packaged foods. Those are the foods that we are living on. And those foods we know cause harm to our health. Nothing good comes from eating those ultra processed foods. We know they lead to obesity, stroke, heart disease. And if you eat multiple servings of ultra processed foods, you have a 62% increase in premature death of all causes. So we know these foods are terrible for us. So one thing that we have to think about, though, is the tide is now turning, right? So people are starting to find, we're all starting to find plant-based foods in our grocery stores, things labeled plant-based, saying this is a good thing, and people being excited about that. Now, I think it really is a good thing. It's obviously a great thing for animals, and it's a great thing for our environment, but some of these products, we have to be aware, are not good for our health. A lot of these products become ultra processed foods, and we really have to be careful about that. So what is the problem with ultra processed foods? Well, we take a food like this, where we have corn and it's got fiber and water in it and lots of nutrients, and we strip all that away, and what we end up with is something like these Dorito chips, which now, once we've taken the fiber and water out, we've really concentrated the calories in that food. We also have decreased feelings of fullness and satiety. Because the fiber and water are gone, we have this really concentrated food that doesn't make us feel full. So we can just eat and eat and eat more. And the big food companies know this. There was an expose in the Chicago Tribune in 2005 that basically exposed the fact that these big food companies are experimenting to find out what are the most palatable foods for us. What are the things that we're not going to be able to resist? Can we tweak the sugar, fat, and salt and high levels of flavors in food to get them to become addictive, to get them to the point that we can't stop eating them? Now, the food companies aren't in and of themselves, the people working at food companies are not bad people, but companies need to make money. And the bottom line is they need to sell us foods and more foods to be able to make profits. And even if those foods are killing us, which they are, they need to keep selling us more. So we need to be very careful, and we need to take our health into our own hands. Now, we talked about some of the things that have been taken away, but what about the things that have been added into these foods? There's lots of things in here that we have no idea what they are. We can't pronounce them. We have never heard of such things. And some of these are just sugar with other terminology, but some of the foods, like the couple I pointed out here, maltodextrin and carrageenan, we know from recent research are even associated with and have been shown to contribute to inflammatory bowel disease. Bowel diseases like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. And now over 60% of our ultra-processed foods contain this maltodextrin. So it is something we want to get out of our diet. We don't need to be adding all these ingredients into our diet. It's just junk. We don't know what it's doing to us and probably doing bad things. I can tell you these things are not doing any good, right? And of course, we're also now missing all the good stuff. When we fill our bodies up with this junk, we're missing the good stuff. So what is the good stuff? Well, plants have tons of phytonutrients, which just means plant nutrients, things that only come from plants. And a lot of them are anti-cancer and protect our immune system. And also fiber. Now, we found out recently that fiber is extremely important in our diet. That microbiome, those bacteria in our gut, they love fiber. And they eat that fiber. And fiber, again, only comes from plant foods. So they eat that fiber and they make beneficial chemicals for our health that they release, like short chain fatty acids that improve our health, improve our mental health. So these are things that are contributing to our health. And again, it's really as simple as we're getting back to the diet and the foods that we were meant to eat. So we have been putting the wrong fuel in our bodies with high consumption of processed foods and animal products. Again, the products in those foods are getting absorbed in our body and are basically bathing our cells with free radicals and causing inflammation and DNA damage and chronic disease. It all makes sense, doesn't it? So this inflammation now is circulating throughout our body. It's affecting all of our vessels and our organs. And that's why the same bad food habits can cause issues with our brain, like stroke, Alzheimer's disease, and depression, can cause heart disease, cancer, and even affects our immunity. Now, we've all been hearing about COVID, and I think a really interesting study was done recently that showed that our diet is actually pretty critical as to the degree of COVID severity that we might get. So we already know that our Western diet is a bad diet for our health, right? And the countries that have a westernized diet like we do have had a significantly worse course of COVID. The countries that are poor, that eat more plant foods, have done much better. They have less obesity, they have less chronic disease, they're less inflamed. So we know that we've had these high level of deaths and hospitalizations in our country from our Western diet. But if you eat a plant-based diet, you actually have a 75% lower risk of having moderate to severe COVID. That is amazing. If you could bottle that up, everybody would be buying it. And it's easy. It's just down in your produce section, right? Opposite to that is if you eat a low carb diet, which is usually meat heavy diet, you actually have 4 times the risk of those who eat a plant-based diet of having moderate to severe COVID. And I think the shocking thing is it's 1.5 times more than the already terrible Western diet that we're eating. So it goes to show you that these low carb diets are very inflammatory. Don't try those diets at home. They are terrible for our health. So we have to remember that every bite we take is a weapon for good or bad in our body, and we want to fuel it correctly. When we eat the right plant foods, fiber and phytonutrients get absorbed and basically bathe our cells to fight off disease. And our cells even have receptors for things in mushrooms and the antioxidants in kale. We have receptors on our cells for that, and the cells take in these antioxidants and replenish the cells and fight DNA damage and fight disease. So super important. Phytonutrients are, well, a warfare for our good health. Fruits, vegetables, beans, legumes, whole grains, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices, all these things are fueling our good health. So I hope that I have convinced you that you can change your health with your diet by eating more whole plant foods, and that you can get to your best health this way. So if you are a junk food vegan, or if you are somebody who's still eating a lot of meat in your diet, what are some of the easy wins you can do for maximum health? The first thing is that you need to eliminate processed meats from your diet entirely. They are a type 1 carcinogen, meaning they are known to cause cancer. They're in the same group as cigarettes. And you also are going to want to eliminate red meat from your diet. It is a type 2A carcinogen, probably causing cancer, actually very strongly linked with colon cancer. And of course, we just talked about you want to eliminate highly processed foods. Get those chemicals out of your diet. So some easy wins are to eat more plant proteins like beans and lentils and chickpeas and etc. Add more fruits and vegetables wherever you can. Look at every meal as a way to get more fruits and vegetables and plant foods in. Add more whole grains. Try out all the plethora of whole grains that are out there. Sorghum is a new favorite of mine. We've got, of course, brown rice and wild rice and teff and amaranth. There's just a lot of them out there to try out. They're really helpful for us. Cook at home more often. If you cook, you have control over what you're eating. And when you eat out, make healthy choices. Tell the restaurants what you want and let them learn that we all want more healthful options at our restaurants when we're dining out. You'll start to see health changes really quickly. You're going to feel more energy right away and start having better sleep. You're going to start seeing health improvements really quickly. Your blood pressure may start to normalize pretty quickly. You're going to see changes in your cholesterol levels within a month or so. So it's just amazing. There really is nobody who's not going to benefit from this diet. It is going to improve everybody's health. So remember that this is about a mindset too. This is not a diet. It's a lifestyle. You're going to be doing this for life. And there is no calorie counting. You can eat as much as you want. And this is also not a diet of deprivation. You're going to be eating in abundance. We've got tons of plant foods out there that are just delicious. There's lots of texture and lots of taste and lots of beautiful colors. And you're going to find so much enjoyment in your food that you've not known before. Look at food as nourishment for your body. And remember, it is a zero-sum game. Everything you're going to be putting in your mouth, you could be putting in something healthier. So make every bite count. And of course, add a variety of plant foods to your diet. The variety is really important. So examples of things for breakfast are adding more fruits and whole grains, having things like avocado toast, overnight oats, and a smoothie in which you can add a lot of greens and other really helpful things in. Lunch, we can easily add more beans and vegetables to our lunch. Leave the cheese out and try something like a bean burrito. Snacks, lots of great snacks. I think adding whole foods in at these times, like nuts and fruit and edamame, makes a great snack. For dinner, I say concentrate on adding more greens and beans and replace meat with beans and mushrooms. This is a portobello mushroom burger, and I actually just had one last night. Super delicious. Dessert, lots and lots of options. Certainly, this is a great opportunity to get more fruit in if you're craving something sweet. And I have a great recipe on my website. Actually, all these recipes are on my website for this fruit with chocolate hummus recipe. It's really delicious. So I hope I've convinced you that the way to achieve your best health is through whole food plant-based eating. So I really appreciate you listening today, and I'm so glad to have been able to speak to you, and I hope I've inspired you to add some more plant foods to your diet and really get back to your best health. If you want more information, I've got a lot of information on my website. I have recipes, I have information on achieving your best health for lots of different disease processes. And I also have a newsletter, a free newsletter you can subscribe to get the latest research information on your best health. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and best of health to all of you.
Hello, are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, we might have some time for questions, so we're
Oh, okay.
trying to see if there's any questions.
Do we have any questions in the audience?
I've got a question. You're talking specifically about the best for human health. How do you deal with this when you go out to eat? I'm just curious because you're talking about a lot of specific things here.
Yeah, I have really found that when I go out to eat, it matters not where I go and what kind of restaurant I go to. I was actually just in a small town up on the East Coast recently, and they certainly didn't have any vegan restaurants. They didn't really have much on the menu. They didn't have anything vegan on the menu. Maybe occasionally a vegetarian meal would be on the menu at these restaurants. And I have found that the best way to deal with that is to look at the sides and pick out a bunch of side dishes that you like. But usually if you ask the server and you say, I want plant-based food, I don't eat meat, I don't eat, milk products or cheese, and I want it low oil, or, whatever it is, they actually will go out of their way to make sure that you get what you want. They want you to come back and they want you to be healthy. So I have never found that I've had a problem. And actually, I've had some of my very best meals at restaurants in which they kind of threw something together for me. They would say, just pick, 5 of your favorite sides. And I'd end up with all these great vegetable dishes. And so I think that's a really good way. And I think it just lets those restaurants know that we're interested in having more healthful food options.
Okay, any other questions? We've got maybe time for one more question, if anybody has one. Felicia, you have a question? No? All right, well, thank you. I'll let Claire take over.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak to us.
Thank you.
Okay, so really quick announcement. Leah